Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Knockout Podcast, episode 59. Back for another week for discussing the highs and lows, everything in between of the world of MMA. No crazy stories actually this week. Everything seems to have averted me unless I've not been looking in the right places. But we've got a pretty fun UFC 262 to look back on with a few talking points. And we've got a disappointing card this week, really. But there's a fun main event and there's a few fun fighters that we can get talking about as ever. I'm joined by Jack. Jack, we're 3-4 days after UFC 262. How are you sort of feeling about that event in the aftermath?
I think it was a decent kind of night. Like there were quite a few, like some really good fights, like the Barboza and which we'll get to these later, obviously, but the Barboza Burgos fight and the Oliveira and the main event were fantastic fights, very fun. And also the main event was like, I think a really feel good moment. Like I didn't know kind of like it's weird that like sometimes you don't necessarily have like that strong a favorite like going in or necessarily, but I knew like the moment like I saw the knockout and I saw Oliveira like kind of celebrating, it kind of like it made me happier than I thought it would.
Yeah, no, I was the exact same. Like I was watching it the next morning. I'd managed to avoid everything and like I let out like an audible like cheer and like fist bump. And I was like,
Yeah,
I've not been like one that's been like following Charles Oliveira's career with a huge amount of interest, but it was certainly as we'll get on like his career trajectory is sort of Bisping-esque in terms of a guy that was just sort of like there and as really. I mean, obviously he's been on quite a sort of a better run than Bisping ever
yeah.
went on, but in terms of never always been there for so long, but never thought of as a guy who could ascend these heights, and he did so in such a fantastic way.
Yeah, no, it like that is a fairly good comparison. Like slightly different. Like Bisping was more, he really got an opportunity. Like he really got an opportunity and took advantage of it as like best he could, like in the moment. Whereas Oliveira has been like a case of more consistency and like kind of a overall kind of career resurgence or turnaround in like the past few years. Um, but yeah, like it really did kind of like make me quite pleased to see that because like he's always talked to the guy, especially like given how the fight played out as well. I mean, I guess we're just talking about the fight now. Given how the fight played out as well, like how rough the first round was for him, he was like always generally considered a guy that would kind of wilt under pressure, and that if you could hurt him early or make him uncomfortable early on, that he struggled to recover. And he's absolutely put all of those kind of comments to bed now. Like the way he recovered in between the rounds was like super impressive to me because like he was very close to being finished from a very big puncher, but he managed to kind of like tie up Chandler on the ground, like buy himself time to the end of the round, and then between rounds, like not only kind of mentally recovered like back to like just a normal level where he can go out and like be okay again and not be like totally shaken, but also like then changed kind of his approach, which paid dividends essentially straight away. So after being dropped to then having a kind of strategic shake up like in between the rounds, not much of a shake up, but just a bit of a change, was like I was really, really impressed by that. And I thought that it was fantastic, really.
Yeah, no, it was certainly a chaotic first round. I mean, I think a lot of what we said, looking back was right in terms of Chandler was going to take the take control early, fire out that left to the body, which he did a lot. Obviously that left hand is his go-to shot. Actually, it might be the right to the body, but
Yeah, I think it's like he really likes to shift a lot. So he'll throw the right to the body, and then like what he got Hooker with was the kind of like right to the body, and then he'll shift and catch you with the left hook. And he caught Oliveira with that quite early. It was when Oliveira jumped to then try and like shot a double straight away, and Chandler got him in the guillotine. It was like just after he got clipped with the left hook, I think. Um, But yeah, no, that is Chandler really to a T.
Yeah, and it worked, pretty well for the opening parts of that round. They then went into, obviously, got him in that guillotine. Ended up with Chandler having his back taken, which is not the ideal situation you want, especially against Oliveira. But to be fair to his credit, managed to work his way out well, and then, as you say, dropped him toward the end of the round, and it did look at one point that the ref might step in, but Oliveira just about did enough, kept himself going, and it's sort of epitomized this sort of run he's had of recent, where he's made himself, he's hittable. Was he?
Oh yeah.
he showed that in this fight, and he's shown it even in his wins, most recently. But he just finds a way to keep himself in, whether it was him moving his head or going for the takedowns, just doing enough to keep himself busy, to keep Chandler off him and to get to the end of the round. And as you say, he steps out there, start of that second round, and well, within less than 20 seconds, it's all over. Catches him with a beautiful check left hook, gets him to the ground. Chandler's running away, gets him with another left hook, and that's it really. I mean, it was a fantastic recalibration with in between rounds. Probably one of the the best that I can think of in terms of recent memory, in terms of having such a near awful ending to the first round, and then coming out there and knocking your opponent down within the first sort of 10 seconds of the round. It was fantastic, and does go to show the perhaps the mentality and that confidence that he has in himself. I think a lot of us and a lot of people forget how young he was when he came into the UFC. He came in at, I think it was 21 years old, which is you're not ready there, probably from a technical standpoint, but probably from a sort of a mental and mentality standpoint as well. And he's now 31. Even then, that's still pretty young, but well, not young, but not old at least. And he's turned it around and turned it around in such a fantastic way.
Yeah. Kind of going back to the knockout, we did talk in the preview of Oliveira's kind of counterpunching in the pocket is one of the new layers that he's added to his game to be offensively potent in the last few years. And you've the way the left hook itself, look, it was a beautiful punch, genuinely one of the best left hooks I can remember seeing in the UFC. Honestly, it was fantastic. It just looked so light and effortless, but clearly he just got him perfectly. It was a peach of a punch. But also Oliveira counterpunching there and closing the door on the exchange was kind of shows in a way his depth compared to Chandler, who if you look at the slow-mo replay of the knockout, Chandler fires the right hand and then the left hook is there all day for him to land on Oliveira, but he doesn't throw it. And then Oliveira counters him with his own left hook and then gets the job done. So yeah, I think that kind of it was a nice kind of exchange to show the depth of Oliveira and how he's progressed.
Yeah, I think another thing was, as you say, that counterpunching was there and obviously used to fantastic effect. But the thing that surprised me, I mean, I say surprised, was so noticeable was the how open Chandler kept himself, and that has been a problem in the past. That has been a manner in which he has lost fights in the past, but especially a guy like Oliveira, who, as you say, we know has this, recent addition and ability to counter well in the pocket. It was surprising to me that how open Chandler left himself, and that ultimately was one of the factors that cost him.
Yeah. These are, I think, a good description of these guys. They've been often described as glass cannons, both of them. They're both very dangerous, but fairly fragile, and also quite defensively vulnerable. Both of them are, which is going to make Charles Oliveira title fights going forward very interesting, because he will have a competitive fight with all of the top 5 really. And like he might nearly get finished in all of them, but there are a lot of them that I think that he can now come back and win. So it'll be interesting. I am really excited for kind of the Oliveira reign and for however long it lasts, which, to be honest, looking at the matchups going forward, like Gaethje, Poirier are both very dangerous matchups for him. So
yeah, I mean, if we look at those matchups, I think the obvious one would seem to be the winner of Poirier McGregor 3 in what was it now, a couple of months' time. That would seem like the obvious one. I obviously have no idea for timescales and what the UFC is planning to do, how quickly a winner of that fight would want to be back out there. But you'd imagine that they'd be targeting that for end of this year, early next year. That seems like the obvious first candidate. But obviously you mentioned Gaethje, who still hasn't fought since he lost the belt. There might be perhaps even the name that we'll come on to next in the co-main event, Beneil Dariush, could be a guy that Gaethje ends up fighting, because I feel like he perhaps was biding his time, wondering whether he could get himself an automatic title shot. But it seems now that the division has moved on to the extent that he's going to have to fight again and sort of reassert his claim for a title shot. But yeah, as you say, I mean, there's so many fun fights out there. I mean, Dariush.
Right, I've got, this is my master plan. Right,
okay, hit me with that.
So, how it should all shake out. I mean, you might be able to guess where this is going early, based on it being me offering this plan. But right,
Max Holloway comes up to 155.
Right, spoiled the ending now. But right, Gaethje and Dariush both need another win. Like, they're not ready to fight for the title yet. Like, they both need another win. Poirier McGregor is in July, whenever, a while off. It's going to be a war. They'll need some time off, I think, probably. So lightweight, there's no one really deserving of a shot at the minute. And if Oliveira wants a quickish turnaround, let's say September, like something like that, which is certainly doable, that's 4 months. And we know featherweight's tied up at the minute. You know, Volkanovski's fighting Ortega. And Holloway has just beat Calvin Kattar in a brutal fight where he looked fantastic. Why not do a rematch? It is a rematch. It's got that intrigue of a fight where Holloway in the last one, although it was a freak injury, did finish him. And again, the injury obviously was the finishing factor. But if you look at the fight, Max Holloway was really in control of it and was kind of beating Oliveira up for like the minute or so it lasted. So I'm just saying that if we could get that done, like in September, something like that, I think it'd be fantastic. And I think Holloway would have a real shot.
Then you get yourself Holloway Poirier 2 or Holloway McGregor
3, wouldn't it?
Or is it Holloway Poirier 3?
Yeah.
Or Holloway McGregor 2, I think.
Oh, I'd love that.
But
yeah, would be 2. Or Gaethje Holloway maybe at some point.
Yeah,
would be pure
options. I mean Micheal Chandler as well. I mean he's someone who will be.
Let's not forget about Chandler as well. That's awesome.
he is someone who you imagine will be keen to get back out. I mean, Chandler Gaethje is a particularly fun fight, but I mean there's plenty out there. But yeah, I mean, I think the overall thing is lightweight is in a good place. I mean, it's always a cracking division, but I think Charles Oliveira is a guy that you know you're going to get a great fight out of, and a fun fight at that. And so it'll be fantastic, as you say, to see. You know, it could be a short reign, but regardless, it'll certainly be a fun one.
Yeah, I think like that plan's not something that UFC would necessarily go down, but we know that MMA is a very crazy and unpredictable sport.
Crazier things have indeed happened,
both in the cage and out of it. So like, it's certainly possible that there is like a cancelled, like Oliveira's opponent pulls out at some point. They need a replacement on like a few weeks or something.
Dallin Quintus time. Yeah. Didn't do it against Khabib. We'll get it done this time.
But no, like, so who knows kind of what's going to happen, but there isn't a way. Like, I don't see like a lightweight title fight being uninteresting for quite a while. So
no.
that's cool.
Certainly not. Well, one of those names we mentioned in the cohort of the chasing pack now must include Beneil Dariush, who I think has now gone up to number 3 in the lightweight rankings. He put on a clinic against Tony Ferguson, defeating him 30-27. And while, of course, we will get to Beneil, the obvious story feels like Ferguson, which I feel like is a shame, because I think some of the discussion sort of post-fight has been sort of, oh God, Tony's, not what he was, rather than, no, Beneil put on a cracking fight. So we will get to Beneil. But I mean, we did go into this fight saying a lot of it hinges on the intangibles of, how bad is this Ferguson slide? Okay, fine. The Gaethje one was, he was beaten by a cracking fighter. Okay, the Charles Oliveira one, that's a guy now fighting for the belt. But Beneil Dariush is a guy that is on a fantastic run. But if Ferguson is anywhere near the levels that many of us think that he could have been at heading into this fight, then this is one that he could have won. But I mean, he just looked slow, gun shy. I mean, he looked like an old man in there, and I don't think Beneil Dariush, we always say, is a guy that doesn't sort of look particularly athletic. He's not sort of naturally athletic, but I mean, he made Ferguson look like some sort of old bloke who sort of stumbled out of the bar into some fight. It was quite bad to watch. I mean, just a wrestling clinic. But I mean, probably should have submitted him at the end of that second round. I'm not quite sure how Ferguson didn't tap, but that's just another story in of itself. But what did you make of the Ferguson performance, or lack of performance, really?
Yeah, I think it is very clear to see like a massive decline in Tony Ferguson, and like although he's had wins kind of since then, I really think that if you look at the Anthony Pettis fights, and in particular certainly the Donald Cerrone fight, he doesn't look amazing there. I think like in those fights, like he looks like he's kind of starting to lose a step. Like the Cerrone fight really is kind of like somewhat of a last hurrah for both of them, really. It was a really fun action fight, but I don't think they were both necessarily 100% there. And then the fight against Justin Gaethje, which is one of the most brutal beatings like in recent memory, is taken all the last of like his prime out of him, and he's really got not much left at all. So yeah, I think that the heel hook at the end of the second round, kind of like to pivot, that to me kind of like just kind of like how that played out, and like his refusal to tap is a really bad sign going forward, honestly, because it really seems that although it's clear for everyone else to see that Tony Ferguson isn't the same anymore, and that he's not in the right headspace to kind of like be what he needs to be as a fighter to perform well. Like the fact that he wouldn't give up there, or like wouldn't tap there, was like he's not aware of it, and he's going to continue to throw himself into ever more increasingly dangerous situations, or, well, not necessarily increasingly dangerous, but given his decline, potentially increasingly dangerous, just until the UFC probably cut him. So I don't know. I'd be very happy for Tony Ferguson to retire right now, because I just don't think that he's in the right frame of mind to be the fighter that he was, and I don't think he'll ever get back there.
Yeah, I mean, his career is only going one way. There might be favourable matchups that he faces in the near future that means he gets a win, but there's not a lot, a sort of a universe where Tony Ferguson takes a sort of 18 months off, comes back, gets a win, and makes sort of final run for the title. There is only downhill, and unfortunately for Ferguson, I think at least, which is a shame. But let's at least give.
Just like a final word on that is like, I think that like looking at the top 15, and this might like, I mean, like this loss really has like completely like Tony Ferguson's done for me. But like honestly, looking at the top 15, I wouldn't pick Tony confidently over anyone. Like Thiago Moises is ranked number 15, maybe. But other than that, I don't see a good matchup for him, to be honest. Almost everyone there gives him real trouble, I think. So, I don't know. I don't know where he goes from here, really, if he doesn't retire.
Yeah, I think he feels like the kind of person, and I think even on his Twitter or his Instagram, you can see that he's going to have to be. He's not going to jump unless he's shoved. Yeah, and by that I mean he will keep fighting and he will keep taking fights as long as the UFC or other promotions are willing to give him fights.
And they'll be willing to do it for a long time because Tony Ferguson, despite everyone being able to clearly see his decline, like his name value alone, like the UFC are more than happy to build prospects off of him.
He was the biggest name and he is the biggest name on this card. So
yeah, probably that's true.
So yeah, it's a shame, but I mean, this is what years of getting punched in the head will do to you. But let's focus on Beneil Dariush for a bit. Great win for him. As I said, up now number 3. He is now a bona fide contender. And really, what a fantastic run he's put on of late, and really feels like he's improving. I feel like in the Carlos Ferreira fight. Perhaps probably a high level of opponent, or at least which feels funny to say, but a really good performance. Mixing in the wrestling, really physical. Obviously, great submission game, and just an all round dominant performance from the first minute, really.
Yeah, similar kind of thing to kind of what Oliveira did to Ferguson. Really just kind of nullified him with the wrestling, and Tony lacking the kind of athleticism or kind of, I suppose, creativity and flair that he used to have, was really, and I think it was DC maybe on the commentary was talking about how when you are that kind of a fighter, like you are kind of unorthodox and scrambly like that, your fundamentals can often be lacking. So when you kind of lose a step physically and you lose that kind of creativity, you don't have kind of the fundamentals to fall back on. And I think kind of that's what we're seeing with Tony Ferguson, which is why that Oliveira and Dariush have been able to I don't want to say necessarily easily, but almost kind of just really be able to contain him on the ground. Whereas so many people, including Kevin Lee, who's a fantastic top player of his own right, arguably better than Dariush, or not Oliveira, but definitely arguably better than Dariush. Kevin Lee had a lot of trouble with Ferguson on the ground, whereas these last 2 fights, almost nothing. But yeah, that's still me talking about how Tony Ferguson is bad now, not praising Dariush like I'm supposed to be. But no, Dariush stuck to the game plan, kind of got it done, did what he needed to do, and it was a intelligent performance, I think. And realistically, is unlucky not to have finished him.
Yeah, I think any other man with a, I don't know what Tony Ferguson's pain threshold is, but I'm not sure he would have been. I don't want to know. I'm not sure he'd have been much use in a sort of Japanese Second World War, prisoner of war sort of trials. Put it that way. Yeah, crazy, but great performance from Dariush, and he keeps his upward momentum going. Elsewhere on the card, Bontarin with a good win against Matt Schnell. Caitlin Chikagian with the most Caitlin Chikagian win against Viviane Araujo. The other one opening up the main card. Did it get fight of the night? It did get fight of the night. It's the one that we picked to be our fight of the night. Edson Barboza, Shane Burgos. Shane Burgos, when he retires, he has got, if he can learn to count cards, he has got a career in poker, because blimey, he's got some poker face. He basically tricked his brain for about 3 seconds that it wasn't going to sleep before he stumbled back in the third round and slumped on the ground. The bloke has got to stop getting hit so much, and I feel like that's not great analysis, but he was just getting peppered by the leg kicks early on, and we said Barboza is a guy who struggles when he gets sort of pressured, and there were moments, I think, especially in that second round where Burgos started to get it together a bit more. But when you're taking those many shots, it's so difficult to build any sort of momentum and pressure effectively to the point where Barboza was going to struggle.
Yeah. Initially, kind of. So this fight played out differently, I think, to how other Barboza fights at featherweight have played out. It was much more of the kind of Barboza at lightweight that we saw here, although he did it against someone that was trying to pressure him, which he could never do at lightweight. He'd never really found the ability to do that. But here he was able to kind of kick a little bit off the back foot, and adding some counter kicking to the legs, which early on was really messing with Burgos. He really couldn't get the read on that. Burgos is the kind of guy that his defense offensively, he's very potent, I think. And has kind of a fairly natural innate ability to kind of break a fighter down. But defensively, he's very slow to adapt. But he did adapt over time. He did start to kind of he pulled the leg back more. And Barboza had a little less success with it kind of towards the end of the first round, from what I remember. And Burgos managed to start getting his kind of combination, pocket body punching game going. And end of first round, second round made it a really competitive and fun fight. But then kind of the next shift after that was Barboza kind of settling down into what we have seen with him at featherweight, which was a kind of a counter puncher. Who will sit down on his punches more, not take as many back steps. And kind of that mixed in with Barboza started adding in kind of the spinning kicks, all that stuff. That kind of then started to build on Burgos again. And then he never adapted from that, really. It was like that. Barboza counterpunching him in the pocket, throwing spinning kicks at him until the end of the fight, which was, as you said, a very strange knockout and honestly quite scary. The way he looked, he just kept moving, he was trying to convince himself, yeah, I'm going okay, and then it was just oh, I am not okay, I can't do it. Or not even that. I don't think he was aware of it. It was just his brain was nope, we're off. And just he was out on the feet, fell face planted on the ground, and I think was fully unconscious on the ground before Barboza landed another shot on him.
Yeah,
it's very odd.
Yeah, very odd, but a great performance from Barboza. He continues to enjoy a sort of mini career resurgence at featherweight. I mean, bizarre. He looked absolutely shredded at lightweight, but seems to have had no problem adjusting at quite a late age to fighting at 145. And he will no doubt provide a stern test for whoever else moving onwards. I mean, Burgos, I think there is clearly a lot of talent in there. There's clearly a hell of a lot of a chin in there, which you've got to get worried about, because you can't keep taking that much and expect your chin to hold up. But
yeah, Burgos does have it's a good chin. It's not and he's very tough. Don't get me wrong. It's a very good chin, but it's not a it's got cracks in it, and we can see that now. Think of someone else with a great, Holloway. The shots that hurt Burgos here, not even the knockout, but the shots that wobbled him beforehand, because he got hurt multiple times in this fight. Holloway would have walked through them, really. So he has a good chin, but not, his defense isn't good enough, and his chin isn't good enough, I don't think, to play the kind of fight that he wants to. So I think that as much as I love watching Shane Burgos fight, I think if he does want to come back, which I imagine he will, he does need a fairly big stylistic shift to kind of change the way he's fighting or approaching a fight, because I don't think he has the kind of like tools or kind of natural abilities for it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. But yeah, I think there does need to be a. I think I thought the Josh Emmett fight last year might have brought that sort of point home, that you can't go on fighting like this. But hopefully that the Barboza fight and the fact that he was finished might ram home that point further, that there has to be an element of, let's try and not get hit as much, because funnily enough, getting hit quite a lot does not do your chance of winning a fight all that much good.
It does not.
But regardless, still a cracking fight. And certainly deserving of actually, well, I was about to say the 50,000, but the 75,000 after Ferguson sort of managed to haggle that in the middle of a press conference.
Which is best performance from Ferguson in a long time.
Yeah, that is
not necessarily the whole press conference. The rest of the press conference was quite strange, and I wasn't a big fan. But that getting them bigger bonuses was pretty cool. So nice.
Elsewhere on the card, I mean, I'll give a quick shout out to Andre Muniz, who I can't say I'd seen any of before this fight, but submitting, well, not just submitting, but breaking Jacare Souza's arm is pretty impressive, to say the least. Andrea Lee with a good win. Priscilla Cachoeira with the second round knockout. Who would have thunk it?
She's improving.
I know she's the title is hers if she wants it. But yeah, some good stuff elsewhere. But mainly those three that we talked about providing the. Well, I was about to say the fun fights. I'm not sure the Ferguson one was particularly fun, but at least the big talking points. And
I can't believe. I mean, I can't remember sorry, I'm just looking at the scorecard now. Completely off the topic. But I can't believe that second round in the Ferguson fight wasn't given a 10-8.
Yeah.
That seems odd to me.
That is bizarre.
I can't remember the rest of the round, to be honest. Maybe I don't remember Tony doing anything of note. So with how close and how badly that heel hook hurt him, it really should be a 10-8. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, but a good card. And when you consider it lost, Diaz Edwards as a co-main and Shabazian, Habanson, which we'll talk about, which certainly isn't, a barnstormer, but a solid fight. I think it did well. And then certainly that main event delivered in the best possible way. We'll move to this week's card, UFC Vegas. What are we on? 27 now. I mean, not a whole lot to talk about, not a whole lot of intrigue. I mean, as I said before we came on, Justin Taffer, Jared Van Der Aar, third on the card with Felicia Spencer versus Norma Dumont Viana just below that. So not a whole lot of intrigue. I mean, you mentioned Damir Ismagulov opening up the card. There's a few names up there on the prelims that are taking your fancy for just people to watch out for.
So there's Damir, I can't say his name. Damir Ismagulov, is a very solid fighter. He's been out for a couple of years, unfortunately. He hasn't fought since August of 2019, where he beat the now newly ranked Thiago Moises at lightweight. But yeah, he's a very kind of solid fighter. Good defensively, kind of nice counterpunching, and is generally really fun. Not like a action fighter, but technically sound, interesting fighter to watch. But who will kind of make you think about, why is he good? But he is. And then Claudio Silva, who he's very old now, but was on a cracking run for a long time.
Yeah, got beaten by James Krause. I was going to bring that up. He's got one hell of a backstory, as well as you say, a pretty good run in the UFC. But yeah, Court McGee feels like a bit of a layup given his recent performances. The other one actually I'd mention would be the opener on the prelims, Ricardo Ramos Bellagio. Ricardo Ramos, the only reason it sticks in my head is because he fought Lerone Murphy and kept doing the Rabona kick to Lerone Murphy, where he'd sort of get close and Rabona him, which did absolutely no damage, as I'm sure you can imagine, but also meant he had to get so close to Lerone Murphy that he ended up just getting peppered himself. So hopefully he's not been honing that and has put that back in the toolbox. But Bellagio is a fun fighter, and that could at least be something interesting. On the main card itself, I mean, there feels like three that have either a bit of intrigue or perhaps a bit of divisional relevance. One of them is one we just talked about, one I just mentioned, Jack Hermansson, Edmund Shabazian. Weird one for Shabazian. He feels like he's lost, but managed to work his way up the rankings in terms of his next fight. He got thoroughly beaten by Derek Brunson. And
who
Jack
now I think is actually higher up the rankings.
Yes, I think he was. I think when this fight was made, I think Hermansson was still above him. But yeah, as you say, Brunson after his win against Kevin Holland has moved up. And Hermansson coming off that short notice loss against Marvin Vettori. Feels like quite a stern test for Shabazian, who I thought might work his way back down the division and then come back up again. But there's obviously a lot of talent there. A lot of power, but I mean there was massive cardio issues in that Brunson fight and a lot of, well, I guess youthful naivety that he's going to have to develop, and the only way to do that is fighting other people and doing that regularly. But Hermansson feels like quite a stern test to try and continue that improvement.
Yeah, I think Hermansson is a tough one for him. I think that, especially given his cardio issues, I think that Hermansson,
he can set a pace. He can.
Yeah, who himself is very tough. So isn't going to be an easy finish for Shabazian. Will really push him late. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously Shabazian's still very young. So it'll be interesting to see kind of like the changes he's managed to make. If any. So yeah, I don't know. It should be a insightful fight generally, and we can see kind of like where they're both at.
Yeah, definitely. Elsewhere on the card, co-main eventing, we have Yan Xiaonan, Carla Esparza. Yan Xiaonan, who is sort of another one out of that crop of developing Chinese talent. She's put on, well, a quite impressive display of unanimous decision victories. Angela Hill, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, and Claudia Gadelha. She comes in against Carla Esparza, who, to be fair, herself has put on quite a decent run recently, beating Alexa Grasso, Michelle Watson, and Marina Rodriguez, albeit 2 split decisions and 1 majority decision. I mean, you know what you're going to get with Esparza. It's going to be the wrestling. It's sort of Claudia Gadelha, but for 3 rounds rather than 1.5.
Pretty much.
And Yan Xiaonan, I can't say I've seen a whole lot of her. I feel like I watched her against Kowalkiewicz and probably Gadelha, but there was nothing that particularly stood out. I feel like she didn't quite carry the same sort of power as Weili Zhang. I mean, not sort of, you don't have to be the exact same as your nation's counterpart, but I feel like there are similarities there, but probably just a pretty. I mean, there are some in terms of the pressure she did. I remember she did quite a lot of good work against Kowalkiewicz in the clinch and against the fence, but perhaps a bit more technical and less relying on the power than Weili.
Yeah, I can't this is quite bad, but I can't remember that much about her either. I should, but from what I vaguely remember, I remember thinking that her footwork was quite nice and that she was had fairly good kind of technical boxing for the division. I may be way off here, but I think pretty sure that's from what I remember seeing of her that she's quite nice in that respect. So should be all right, and hopefully I will watch her this time and actually learn a bit more about her, so next time she fights we can have something interesting to say.
That's the plan, at least.
Although we probably said that last time.
We probably did.
She's been fighting ranked fighters for a while, so
yeah, and actually in a division that we've actually been trying to pay attention to. So that's probably more on us than it is on Yan Xiaonan. But
yeah.
Main event time: Rob Font, Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt coming off that good knockout performance against Rafael Assunção, then had quite a lot of problems with long COVID, and has been out for quite a while. Rob Font piecing up a Marlon Moraes, who decided to come back 2 months after a vicious head kick KO against Corey Sandhagen. Rob Font seems like a guy that has just sort of crept up on the top of the rankings, sort not out of nowhere, but he took quite a while off. Didn't only fought sort of once in 2019, once in 2020, but a really impressive win, albeit against Marlon Moraes, that feels like it's heading in the other direction. And then you've got Cody Garbrandt, that is still, even with the win against Assunção, still feels like a bit of an enigma. I still don't know whether we're going to see the same Cody Garbrandt that gets lured into a firefight if one is sprung upon him, or whether we can see the composure that we saw against Assunção, which, albeit it was a victory, he certainly that there was certainly problems with output in that fight, and it feels like you either get a sort of slow, lethargic Cody Garbrandt fight, or you get just an absolute one filled with carnage. I'm looking at it now. He landed 8 strikes in the first round against Assunção and 11 in the second. So I still don't know where I stand with Cody Garbrandt, but have you got sort of any thoughts on how you feel this one playing out?
The big kind of narrative around Cody Garbrandt has been the patient Garbrandt narrative, which I really don't think is one that kind of bears much or requires much. I just don't buy it, basically. The idea that Cody Garbrandt was too impatient against TJ Dillashaw and stuff like that, it just really doesn't ring true. He got caught with the same strike. It was a long looping left hook, literally 3 times in a row, within 5 seconds. There is something kind of much more kind of fundamentally wrong, on a defensive level, rather than just, he got too aggressive. He's also been someone, I think, that obviously the Cruz fight, he was fantastic, but he's been someone that's not really kind of used his overall game to kind of apply his most dangerous weapons as effectively as he should. He really hasn't made use of his jab, which is quite a good one. He could really
especially
really
when you
benefit.
compare it to Rob Font, who certainly has made the most of his.
Yeah, who is someone that will make the most of his jab. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see if Garbrandt can answer that, because I think that Font is coming in kind of with that, asking the first question with his jab, and Cody needs an answer to it, really. Cody is also, it depends how he looks, because he's had COVID, a few surgeries, been out for a while, and he's not old, I don't think, but certainly maybe he's still 29, but I think with the kind of what his body's taken, he might not be as quick as he once was, which was one of his most terrifying weapons. He was very fast, and very powerful. So it'd be interesting to see if he's still kind of the power will still be there, I think. Whether or not he's still as fast as he once was will be interesting. So yeah, they're the first 2 questions from like each man, really. The jab and the speed for Cody.
Yeah, the Garbrandt one is interesting because I don't know how many other fighters have dealt with severe long-term effects, but Garbrandt feels like the most public one. He's sort of detailed his
and Chimaev.
Troubles. Yes, Chimaev, of course, yeah. And Garbrandt certainly represents the first of them to come back to action. So it'll be interesting to see, perhaps if this fight makes its way into the 4th or 5th round, how that stands up. Yeah, I'd love to see Garbrandt using his jab a bit more. maybe a fight against Rob Font is one where it's particularly more difficult to get that going. But I feel like there's so much. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Just having said that, like, it is more difficult, yes, to get that going, but the fact that Font's a good jabber, more than probably anything, makes it actually more important in this fight than in previous ones. Like, it's like if you've got a good leg kicker in front of you, like, it's often good to leg kick with them. Same with the jabber. If you've got a really good jabber with them, you don't just want to concede the jab to them. You need to build your jab of your own and like build encounters to it. So yeah, that was it.
Yeah, no, there is certainly a route in there for him. If I don't know. I still don't know. I mean, Font as well. I mean, we can talk about him. He as well feels like a guy that I still, outside, Simone was a good win. Sergio Pettis was a good win. And the Marlon Moraes one was as well. But, you look back and not too recently, he's got a Rafael Assunção, unanimous decision defeat. There's obviously been a lot of good work with the jab, but especially in that last fight against Marlon Moraes, I'm not sure how much you can take away from that, because Marlon Moraes came back 2 months after a vicious knockout and decided to sort of charge at Rob Font's outstretched jab. So it'll be an interesting one. I hope it goes a long time and we get to see sort of fully how both of these fighters play out. But I think with a lot of these fights coming in, I mean, especially the three we've talked about, Hermansson, Shabazian, Xiaonan versus Esparza, and the main event, Font versus Garbrandt, it's going to be more interesting to see how the fights actually play out and more to sort of analyze in retrospect. Of course, with that all being said, we probably might not do a podcast next week because I've got exams and there's no fights coming up in the next week. So, having said it'd be more interesting to look at in retrospect. We probably will not look at them in retrospect, but more in terms of their fights coming up, whenever they next fight after that. But if you got any sort of final picks on that main event, any way you can see that going?
I think that I'd probably take Font, to be honest, not for any particularly good reason. I think that he should be able to generally avoid the most damaging shots from Cody. I think he's kind of like solid enough to do that and can keep him off him with his jab. And as you said, as it goes later, I think that I can't imagine Cody Garbrandt's cardio can be in tip-top condition after suffering from kind of like bad COVID side effects. So kind of like just with that in mind, I can see a Rob Font decision or late finish.
Yeah, I think I might agree with you there, but it'd be interesting to see how it plays out. As I alluded to just a second ago, we might not have anything up next week because I've got exams and there's not much to preview. Well, there's nothing to preview, but we might be back in a couple of weeks' time to talk about Jairzinho Rosenstrike, Augusto Sakai. Oh, brilliant! Mikey, will they throw more than 10 strikes? Who knows? You've also got Walt Harris marching to Burr to really whet your appetite. And Tana Bosa, Ilir Latifi is sort of the holy trinity of questionable heavyweight fights. Although that last one might be a bit better, but we'll probably see you in a couple of weeks' time for that. And unless you've got any sort of passing words of wisdom, Jack?
No, that's all from me.
Well, in that case, thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll see you then.
See ya.